Hi everybody, Harv here on a real hot day in July. And I'd like to talk to you about an immigrant lady, my grandma, Ethel Kalmenson. That's my dad's mom. At least it was. Well, she and her husband, Grandpa Max, along with their two sons, Uncle Ben and Uncle Charles, my 2-year-old father-to-be, made their way to the United States of America. And the ship's manifest said it was about 1906. And I think my dad was 4 years old at the time. I'm not too sure. But I've enclosed a photograph of the ship's manifest, and hopefully you'll be able to read it better than I could. You see, about the time Ethel and Max were married, Max was the foreman in Ethel's father's saddle factory. When the communists took over Russia, it brought the family's ability to earn a living to an extremely abrupt ending. And here's a little note for you. Their life was a version of the musical play Fiddler on the Roof. After landing in the United States, Max and Ethel went on to raise a total of 9 children. Some kids remember the smells, the wonderful delights being cooked and baked by their grandmas. It was different for me. I vividly remember the sounds. Each of my dad's brothers and sisters, all 9 of them, played musical instruments. Oddly enough, there wasn't any sheet music to sing or play along with. Much of the music was derived from ancient Hebrew chants. The musical notes were passed on from one shtetl, that's village, if you want to speak it in a different language, a small village. The modern music of the day was learned by ear while listening to the radio. A family member would learn a new tune, then pass it on to a brother or sister by playing for them. And if you're interested, shtetl rhymes with kettle, the German translation, a little town. My grandma Ethel was treated as a true matriarch. She was in total control of the family until the day she died. She rarely did any cooking or house cleaning. Her job was to provide the sustenance for her family's survival. Anyone who may have seen Fiddler on the Roof will have an idea of my grandmother's roots. Her father was a village leader. He owned a factory which manufactured saddles for members of the Tsar's Cossack cavalry. Well, all went well during her young life until just before the Russian Revolution began, and the ouster of the Tsar, and an end to her father's saddle business. Grandma Ethel saw the handwriting on the wall, so in 1903, she packed her belongings and somehow managed her husband and 2 children to make it to, as she would say, with her hand over her heart, the United States of America. Well, within the first few years after their arrival to Brooklyn, New York, Grandma found herself in the unlikely position, due to her young husband's death, of being a single parent and responsible for her family's sole support. Enter the 8-year-old Harvey Kalmenson. Now, please don't get the idea I enjoyed visiting Grandma Ethel. That wasn't the case at all. In actuality, I was probably afraid of her. That's not to say I wasn't learning by soaking up the environment surrounding this lady of unbelievable strength. Once each week, my dad would say we're going over to visit his mother. It never entered my mind to say no to my father. If I did say no, I probably wouldn't be here telling you about what influenced me creatively. There was always someone playing a piano or violin when we arrived. With a mandate set down, each of my 9 aunts and uncles were bound to show up. While all this transpired, Grandma was usually conducting her business as a translator. She was busily continuing her business of reading and writing letters for many of the neighbors to send to their relatives in the old country. It sounds all of those different languages that got me going. Yes, I really didn't care about going to see Grandma Ethel, but to this day she remains one of the most adept linguists I ever had come in contact with. I can't imagine how valuable she would be working at the United Nations today. But the most amazing part of relating this story is an unlikely recurrence. Each time I'm asked the question about what influenced me, in my mind's eye, a picture of the house in Brooklyn, the music playing, the rhythmic chanting, and all those people of foreign extraction coming in and out of a very small apartment Grandma lived in during her entire life in the United States. Long after each and every one of her children became prosperous and she no longer needed to work, she never moved and never stopped doing for others. She had long since stopped charging for her services as a translator. I do believe she had something to do with my life's direction. I can still hear the sounds. I can still hear her saying to anyone and everyone, "Speak English, we're in America." And oh yes, she had her hand over her heart when she said it. Thank you for listening to me on this very warm day in July 2024. The little village my grandma came from was destroyed by first the Russian socialists, then the German military, and now once again, would you believe, rebuilt by Russian communists all over again. I think there's something to say about history repeating itself, if you will. Thanks for listening.